Good evening, everyone. Good to see such a great turnout this evening. I think you've all got seats, which is lovely. I hope you're going to be comfortable. I've opened a couple of windows just to get a little bit of air flowing through. If you're cold or hot, there are other windows you can open or close. If you need, I'm Matthew Cooper. I'm the minister of the church here, which is why I'm saying hello to you. So that's all I'm doing. I'm going to hand over in a moment to Derek McLean, who's the Methodist minister, and he's going to chair this evening. It's been organised by King's Langley Churches Together. So welcome to you all. It's really good to have you all here this evening, and welcome to all of the candidates. They'll be introducing themselves in a few minutes. I hope you're going to be comfortable. I hope it's going to be a good evening. If you do need the toilet, they're out the side here and to the back. If you need some fresh air, by all means, if a fire alarm goes off, go either that way or through the side here, but I'm sure that won't happen. So I'll hand over to Derek.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you to whoever's phone that is as a reminder to everybody else. Let me do the obvious thing and check that mine is off. A slightly misleading advertising has clearly not upset too many of you. I should explain that the posters that we had issued to invite people to this event featured 5 photographs. 4 of those people appear on the panel in front of you. As you may know, there was a change in terms of who the Green Party candidate was, so welcome, Alan. Alan is not Sophia. Also, at the time that we advertised the event and were preparing this, nominations hadn't at that time closed, and we are delighted to welcome Brian, who wasn't on our original list of candidates but is standing as an independent. We can present to you a full slate of the 6 candidates that you will get to choose between. I hope that I will be suitably neutral. The one assurance I can give the 6 candidates this evening is that I'm not going to vote for any of you. I am going to vote, but despite being the Methodist minister here, I actually live just over the border, so I get to vote in the Watford constituency, so none of you are going to persuade me today to vote for you. That would be unfair to comment, particularly as I'm doing one of these over the border as well. I shall be neutral on that occasion too. The proceedings will be recorded. I'll invite people up. Just in terms of the outline, we're going to start, because not everybody here is familiar to you, we're going to start by asking each of the candidates to tell us in 2 minutes why we should vote for them. I don't care whether that's 2 minutes about the party or the individual or what, but they will just get 2 minutes to do that. Hopefully, we'll then work through. I've had quite a lot of questions submitted, so thank you very much for those. I'll work through as many of those. They are pretty diverse, so that should keep us going, and then we'll go to questions from the floor. We will aim to conclude by about 9:30. So if you've all finished questions by 8:30, we can go home early. Seems unlikely. The question that we have, I've chatted with some of the candidates in advance. In terms of balance here, this is clearly national parties in respect of 5 of our 6 candidates, but it's also our local representative. And I wonder whether it would be helpful if we could have a brief show of hands. I mean, apart from me, is everybody here voting in the Hemel constituency? Show your hand. Okay. Now, different question. Of the people here, how many of you are specifically King's Langley rather than Hemel? Whoa. Okay. I find that very encouraging, because one of the things we talked about in advance was the reason we decided to have a separate husting here in addition to what was happening in Hemel was because we see it as very much a large but separate community within the constituency. I hope that's helpful to the candidates, for them to get some sense that the people here are representing this place and seeking to work out who they should vote for. The candidates are seated by lot. They got to select a playing card to determine the order. I'm told by Mike that he was first up last night at the Hemel Hustings as well, so he's obviously in prime slot. So I will invite them in turn to give the 2 minutes on why. Mike.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for coming. I think from all the candidates, we're actually thrilled that there's so many here. And for me, I'm also thrilled we're in Kings Langley. Kings Langley as a village is a fantastic village. And I've said many times before, can show the rest of my constituency, or this constituency, and the country how a village should come together. So for the last 10 years, I've worked enormously close with the parish council, worked with the local authority to make sure this stays as what we would love it to be, a wonderful, beautiful village and vibrant. I'm standing here because 12 years ago, the wonderful lady I'm married to, who happens to be an Essex girl, and she's blunt and she's to the point, and I was sounding off like we've all probably done at some time about what was going on in government and what was going on here. And she said, for God's sake, Mike, I know we're in a church, I won't tell you exactly what she said, but it runs along the lines of, do something about it or shut up. I'll give you, and you can guess what she said. I think she might regret that now, because she married a fireman, and at that time when she said that, I had a little newborn baby, and I was still on crutches from an accident I'd had when I was in the fire service. And there's a whole millions and millions of things that have happened to me since. But the greatest thing that's happened to me in my life, apart from getting married and apart from my 2 wonderful children, is being able to represent this constituency for the last 10 years. I am outspoken. I'm not a professional politician. I've been an ex-fireman. I was a soldier at 16. I didn't go to university. I am probably, I hope, still a working class Tory. I'm very proud of my working class background. I bought my council house on the right to buy. How I got on the housing ladder. That's what I want everybody else to have. Aspiration and dreams for their youngsters. Aspiration and dreams that I have for my youngsters, which is the same, I think, is what we all want that's in the audience today. So hopefully I can continue to represent this great constituency as well as Kings Langley. Thank you very much.
Clearly well practiced. He didn't need to take too much notice of the 30 seconds to go and red flag at the start. So thank you. Over to you, Brian.
I have my own 32-minute counter here, actually, just to keep on target. My name is Brian Hall, and I'm standing as an independent for Hemel Hempstead for the Parliament and standing as a local councillor in Gatebridge. And I decided that from my initial idea of standing in my local council, I said, this is something that I could do because it's free. And I said, free is a really good price. And then when I found out that once every 20 years we'll have 2 elections at once, a nice 2-for-1 down at the shop for Parliament as well. And I said, it's less than an iPhone, so why not? And so I'm standing, not for a party, but for ideas of support and advocacy for disability, discrimination, and autism. Specifically autism, I have spent the last week down in Kingston upon Thames, where I've been supporting an autistic man who's in crisis, who was evicted, who was hit by a car, and the driver is being charged with attempted murder. And I found, by being immersed in that experience of going to the council, going to the doctor, going to all these different support services, that what it says on the tin of we're here to help, how can I help? The tin doesn't have what it says on it, and some of them were so full of abuse, indirect, and against the legislation of the Equality Act 2010, the Autism Act 2009, and the Human Rights Act 1998, that I can't believe what I've seen. And so I'm going to speak to you about issues beyond what are just normally being presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good evening. And first of all, can I say thanks for leaving the cozy comfort of your sofa to be here with us. I mean, that actually in itself clearly sends a message. And the message is, this is your territory, this is your area, and you are passionate about making sure you choose the right person to represent you. And that's what being an MP is about. An MP is not about representing the party. It's not about doing what Clegg, Cameron or Bob says to you. It's about listening to my constituents and then representing that view when I vote. And I think that's where politics has gone wrong. I am a politician, but I'm a community politician. I've been in community politics almost all my life. I actually got into politics because when I first came to this country in the 70s, late 69, 70s, I was confronted by discrimination. It's not an image I had of the country when I was studying in East Africa. It was this beautiful country where everything was so wonderful. But to be confronted by notice boards saying, no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. It just... no autistics. It really got me. And it's at that point I decided, no, I'm not going to just grin and bear it. I'm going to do something. And I got involved. And in fact, in those early days, I got involved with a friend of mine, Lord Dulakia, who ended up as our party president, and we campaigned for the first Race Relations Act in this country. So that's kind of my background. But why am I standing here? Why Hemel Hempstead? What have I got to offer you? Well, I'm a close neighbour, is the best thing I can say. I'm not trying to influence you. I'm actually from Watford, and I've been a councillor in Watford all my life. But that's close enough to be a close neighbour and to be interested enough in the area in its wider sense. The environment, the jobs, the schools, all of that. I was saying in Hemel Hempstead yesterday that in fact I had close connections with Hemel Hempstead itself, the town, but not Kings Langley. I had a business there. I ran a business there for 5 years. And in the context of my politics, in fact, I launched the SDP at the pavilion in Hemel Hempstead. So there is a connection. But why do I want to stand, and why do I want to stand at this time? The Lib Dems, as a coalition, have done a wonderful job. We have stopped the excesses that we would have got from the Conservatives had they been there on their own. We brought in pupil premium, and we reduced the tax rates. I'll give you more of it if I am your MP.
Alan.
Hello, people of Kings Langley. I'm Alan Orgar's Green Party candidate, in case you don't already know me. Now, I may live in Ware, but I believe that nevertheless, I believe the Green Party can represent Hemel Hempstead, Kings Langley and Adeyfield because it can really benefit from a green vision. I'm in particular pleased that Kings Langley is a transition village and is supporting local food markets because the Green Party supports local communities and local democracy, which is what we need. The Green Party also believes that you should have an MP who is willing to be at the heart of your community and represent your interests first. The Green Party also believes in real change, not only for Britain as a whole, but for Kings Langley and the rest of the Hemel Hempstead constituency. A green vision is what Kings Langley would really benefit from, and it will really shine when this vision helps the local food market flourish and the high streets stay active. If you believe in real change, if you want a party that represents you and not corporate lobbyists, and if you want a party that will have honest answers to the problems we all face, then please vote for the Green Party on 7th of May in your community. Thank you.
just ask that...
I'm really terribly sorry about that. It's my specialty is helping grandmothers with computers, so I know the pain of it doing something you don't want it to do.
Sound effects? Good evening. My name is Dr. Howard Koch. I hear you thinking, Doctor Who? No, he's a Time Lord. I'm the UKIP Parliamentary Party candidate for Hemel Hempstead. I'm actually a dentist in the old town, and I've actually worked here for over 30 years, and it's such a great place that my daughter has even joined me. And I talk to people, to patients, every single day, and I listen to them when I haven't got my hands in their mouth, about the problems they're facing, their hopes, their dreams, their aspirations. And I think that I've got a unique insight into what is actually affecting people and is bothering people and is concerning people at the moment. And I'm standing here as the UKIP Parliamentary Party candidate, which is a party that is actually giving the public a real, credible, viable alternative to the other main parties. We're not just about the EU. We are so much more. We have a full spectrum of policies which are all released today, everything from agriculture, fishing, farming, the NHS and immigration. So why vote for me? Well, I'm not a career politician, which means when the political horse trading starts, and it will, if I'm elected, I won't vote the way the whips tell me to vote. I won't vote for my own career. What I will do is vote for what is best for the people, the constituency, and the town of Hemel Hempstead. So that's why you should vote for me. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm Tony Breslin. I'm the Labour Party candidate. It's great to be standing here in Kings Langley this evening. It's great to be following last night. Some of you may have been there. We had an absolutely packed meeting as well in Hemel. That's a fantastic support, a fantastic start to this campaign. I'm a teacher by profession, and I started my career just a stone's throw over the M25 at Langley School. So it's this area that brought me to this part of Hertfordshire, and as I say, it's with some sentiment that I stand here this evening. Mike and I didn't know that he was there, but he had spotted me. We actually we were having coffee at the same time at different tables in Dawlins this afternoon. I just want to be clear that if you saw both of us, this was not an example of us never speaking to each other. But why have I been a Labour Party member since the age of 16? Like Howard, I'm not a professional politician, but I've spent much of my adult life campaigning on elder care and on education and on health. Both of my parents, very much my inspiration, had Alzheimer's. That threw me into politics in a very live and a very inter-party way, very early on. And for many years I led the Citizenship Foundation, the charity that leads in this area. I'm the Labour candidate because I believe in social justice. And I also just want to remind you one thing, that we lost this seat by less than 500 votes 10 years ago, and we can win it again. I'm absolutely convinced of that. A protest vote is simply a vote for more of the same. Vote Labour if you want to see change in Hemel. Thank you.
Can I ask Rachel Biggs to come up, please? Harold. Do you want to take my Jim?
Oh, that's better. Okay. Oops, sorry. Right, could I ask each of the candidates, do you think Hemel Hempstead should have a fully functional hospital?
Can I answer? Because I was at Waterloo.
Can we start at that end, please? Just because we started the other way around.
Yes, absolutely.
The question for anybody that didn't hear it through the screech, apologies for that, should Hemel Hempstead have a fully functioning hospital? You can decide whether you'd like to answer that as a Hemel Hempstead issue or as a national issue, but you may have detected a certain local interest in that.
Shall I start? Yes, absolutely. And our position on that is very straightforward. Whatever your position on large regional hospitals and what have you, nobody in this area should have to travel to Watford under a blue light for a non-life-threatening condition. And that is why we need community-based accident and emergency at Hemel Hospital. And that is why we need, frankly, a much better strategic plan across this part of Hertfordshire for health.
When she was in government, she didn't want to keep Hemel open.
Can we, I think we're getting a clear response to that. Can we go along the line first, and we might well come back to the broader issues of health. Howard, Hemel Hospital.
Well, it's a local issue, it's a personal issue, because I'm getting to the age where I'm going to probably need to be blue lighted there for one reason or another. It is absolutely critical that Hemel Hempstead has a fully functional hospital for a constituency of this size. I'm not going to reiterate what people have said about the party responsible for initially starting its demise. But there's a deeper issue, and that is that even if the money was there to reopen the accident and emergency and maternity, there aren't the doctors and there aren't the nurses and there aren't the midwives, because over successive years from the main parties they have closed down teaching hospitals, they have cut the training, and there simply aren't the people to actually go in there and staff it. So that's an issue that has to be addressed as well.
Thank you. Alan?
Yes, Hemel Hempstead should definitely have a hospital locally. This is not only a local issue for Hemel Hempstead and Kings Langley, but also a national issue. The Green Party believes that healthcare should be available to the nearest community possible, and not only at a local level, but also a locally accountable level where all of you have a say in how your healthcare is provided. Which is why I also believe in stopping privatisation of the NHS, making sure it remains a free service, reversing the role of private finance initiative, and also giving people a democratic say in the National Health Service. Our NHS saves millions of lives every day, and we'd like it to remain that way. I mean, if we have a hospital locally in Hemel Hempstead rather than have to travel Watford, it will not only save lives and make sure people get the care they need as soon as possible, but it will also, on an environmental note, reduce emissions from transport. And it will also be more efficient for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Ravi.
Thank you. I can give you the answer I know you want to hear, or I can give you the honest answer. I'll give you a bit of both. The immediate answer, obviously, is yes, there needs to be, and listen to me carefully, Hemel needs to have access to good and ready health services. The hospital itself, either building, quite frankly, is less of an issue. Provided we've got the emergency, provided you've got the maternity, provided you've got the beds that you need, to say that we must have in Hemel an all dancing hospital, my way of looking at it, yes, it's a nice thing to have. But quite frankly, in the current economic climate, it is not a luxury we can afford. I call it a luxury because we are entitled to luxury, we are entitled to good health care. And let's not forget, it is, although the government is kind of taking the blame for it, it's the health authority who ultimately decides what the need is, where the need is, and then comes out with proposals as to where to base the services. And we really need to listen to the professionals. So yes, in an ideal world, if you had lots of money and lots of space we would have a hospital in every town. In the current climate, quite frankly, that would not be right, and we will not get it. So I'm not going to pretend that we're going to fight a losing battle and lead you up a garden path.
Thank you. Brian.
I've only been here 4 years, but I came here because my partner's parents at 89 were getting on, and George Field, who was a headmaster at Gate Valley, had been losing his marbles for about 10 years, and Nora could handle it, but it was getting a bit much. George was able to tell great stories, but he started to decline. And finally, one day he fell and bumped his head, and we had to get him rushed off to the hospital in Watford. And I'd never been there, and it just seemed like such a far way. And it seemed to be bonkers to me that there would be this limitation. And it's just that the road is so small sometimes. Like, I'm from Toronto in Canada, where roads are huge. Here it's like a little lane, and how are you supposed to get an ambulance? And Vicarage Road, we were going there and the football game was on, and my God, you can't even get to the hospital. So all the visits we went to, and the hill, and the payment of the parking, and all the anxiety, and all the frustration, the place looked a bit shabby, to say the least. I can't imagine it. And when I went back there a couple of weeks ago to visit my friend Mick Young, who was a man who stood up for so many things, and I saw that, well, it's nice enough, but I had to drive so far to go visit him.
Thank you. Mike.
Many of you in this room organised and were part of the campaign over many, many years to prevent the acute services being taken away from us. Monday lunchtime, I was at a funeral of a fantastic lady, a great community leader called Zena Bullimore. Betty Harris has taken over the chairmanship of that. Betty was with us, wasn't capable physically, but was with us when we took the coffin all the way from Hemel, if you remember, all the way to Watford. Because we told them that the blue lights couldn't get there in time. We told them, if you are going to centralise healthcare in this part of the world, you cannot do it next to a football ground in a Victorian hospital. It will cost lives. We told them that. And in 2009, they closed the acute services in the General Hospital at Hemel. Others have said, and I frankly have to agree with them, that they were protecting, the government at the time was protecting Watford MP and the Stevenage MP, because the only two acute services we have in Hertfordshire now are at Watford and Stevenage. When I said what I said now, that was wrong, Claire Ward, the Labour MP in Watford, tried to get me sacked. And I stood up and I said, it is fundamentally wrong if you take all those services there. And they did it. And now we're in the position where Watford can't cope, not least because we got a lot of inappropriate use of the A&E where people are not going to the GP, they can't get the appointment, they're going there. We know all that. And so the Hospital Action Group and myself have agreed that, and that's a cross-party agreement, that we need to fight not only to keep what we've got on the Hemel site at the moment, which is in the Valium wing, which gives you the outpatients and 2 intermediate care wards, etc. By the way, the rest of it is derelict, because they didn't put any security in there, so all the lead was stripped, all the copper was stripped out. So you can see the buildings, but it is decimated. And then we need to sit down and work out how we can have a hospital for people of St Albans that were promised Hemel will be there for them, and for the people of Watford, Rabbi, the people of Watford that are being let down now, because we're all trying to cram into them. Build it on the land at Breakspear, which is owned by the government. Build it at Langley, which is owned by the county council. I don't care, as long as all three of these communities can go to a hospital, which is what they need to happen. The selective memory loss of the Labour Party, who did this, I find is astounding. Turning around and saying tonight that we shouldn't have a blue light ambulance rushing all the way to Watford down those terrible... We told you that. We told you that. I know it wasn't your fault, Tony, you wasn't here. I had your party's campaigners ripping down banners saying, save this hospital, when Patricia Hewitt came to this town. That is what happened, and we'll never forgive you. But what you need to do is work with us, not against us, to have the hospital that we deserve.
I didn't close the hospital. Labour didn't close the hospital. I think in fairness, we need some rules about letting people speak. The hospital is open. I had a small operation in it a few months ago. It's not the hospital we now need. I completely agree. The hospital was closed by the local health trust on the basis of a strategic plan at the time that has not been delivered. I agree with much of the points about the location of Watford. It would be hard, it would be silly not to. I cut my teeth fighting against the closure and postponing for 5 years the closure of Shenley Hospital, where my father was a patient, while we got proper community care in place. And to be honest, I'm not going to take lectures, given that this coalition government has closed 66 A&E and maternity units in 5 years, has seen waiting lists go through the roof, and the situation now where we clearly have a massive capacity crisis across this area because of this government's policies on health. And did we make the right decision back then? No. And when I think something like that, I'll tell you that. Okay? Yes, we need a fully functioning hospital. But what we have the ability to put in place in the interim, because we all know how long hospitals take to plan, deliver, commission, everything else. We have enough of a facility there to put a rung in the ladder between urgent care, which frankly, when you're blue lighted for 2 stitches in your upper lip is not enough, and full-blown A&E. And that's why we're campaigning for community-based A&E, and that's why I'm campaigning for it. And yes, if errors have been made in the past, they have. But that's exactly where I'll stand, and I'll work with anybody on that. That's whether I'm elected or not. But I will be carrying the fight for proper healthcare in this area, the healthcare that all of us need. Let's be quite clear about that.
If I can, this is such an emotive and important subject. Tony, you wasn't here, and I accept that and I respect that for you, but you can't defend the indefensible. The person that the Labour Party put in here, right, Jan Pulaskowski, right, who didn't get interviewed, who became the Chief Executive of the Hospital Trust, and we went and appealed against that, was the highest paid Chief Executive in the country, and he was paid that amount of money to put the blood on the carpet and close our hospital. That is what happened. You can't just go back in and say, we will reopen this, reopen that. It's go there. It's derelict. It is in a dire state. And the situation that is here today was predicted. You can't turn around and say, oh, well, we made a mistake and everything's going to be okay. We won't forgive you for this. We will not forgive the Labour Party for what they did. They ripped our banners down. No, 1 minute. I sat and listened to you all the way through. You ripped our banners down. You actually turned around, you know, and accused people of doing things and saying things.
The aggression here, I think you need to tone down. I'm sorry for an autistic person. If you can moderate your aggression, that would be kind. That would be kind. All I'm asking for is just to be polite.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for your helpful contribution, Brian. Thank you.
I appreciate your passion. I'm not pushing. I'm afraid that's pushing. I'm sorry. Then I'll say that the future matters. The past doesn't matter. The lies of the past 5 years. How much blood did you put on the table of the operating tables in the past 5 years?
Thank you.
Closures all across this country. But we won't forgive. The future is what important. I would like it too.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brian.
Can I make a point, please?
Bear with me 2 seconds.
Just a second.
If there's one more of that, accusing me of putting blood, and I was a paramedic and I fought for this country, all right, and I am not going to take that from anybody, and I don't think anybody else is going to take that. The reason, Brian, is that there is passion here this evening is because we predicted this. We did everything within our powers to prevent it across the parties. But still, at the end of the day, they went ahead, they ignored the community. And you can't just turn around and say that. Now, we are going to get new facilities back on that site, and that's going to start to happen. But at the end of the day, that's short term. The long term, we have to have a hospital for all of us.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, I wasn't, no.
Can we just draw this particular subject to a close?
Sorry.
I think that we have very amply illustrated the views on it, and indeed, I think that all of our candidates are extremely clear on the strength of view across the piece. Now, I'm not wanting to explore that further, but whoever is elected, I think that view is very, very clearly communicated. I would say, particularly to Brian, please bear with me. If you don't like what's being said, a little signal in my direction would be adequate. But I'm afraid that if you don't let others speak, I will have to ask you to step down from the platform. I think that it's extremely important that we hear people speak.
Excuse me. This gentleman wanted to speak, and he had his hand up.
Let the chair do that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that you could put your hand up and speak.
Thank you.
But you stood up and spoke without being...
No, I had invited Mike to speak. Thank you. Is Karen Meller here, please? Karen, can you be ready in a second, but I'd like to go to Patricia Fulton first, who's at the back. Patricia, in case there's feedback, can you come at least part way to answer that question?
This is to Tony Breslin. What are Labour's policies for protecting our green belt at local level and the South East with the ever-increasing population demands?
Before you take that, Tony, can we go to Karen, please, and a couple of the questions that you'd submitted, please. Do you want to come up? It's probably easier than getting the mic to you. Whichever's quickest.
Do you want to do both of them?
Yeah, do both of those. Either of those.
First one was, how do you intend to support local businesses involved in green technologies such as RES? And the second one was, following the recent air quality concerns and our proximity to the M25, what will your government do to improve air quality?
Do you want to go first?
A bit of a mix on that, but a range of environmental issues coming across loud and clear on the environment. Ravi, would you like to go first on those?
Yeah, so in terms of green policies, the Liberal Democrats have been pushing for the green agenda and the green bank now since the last election. We've not been able to progress that so far, but moving forward, we're actually committed to encouraging more green businesses. We've got a fund specifically to help green businesses. And the way you actually tackle the pollution and all of that is really by managing the transport. We need to spend more in rail transport, less on road transport. And again, that's the kind of direction that Liberal Democrats would go. But ultimately, I think we also need to look at the international element when it comes to the environment. And one of the reasons we advocate staying in Europe, if you like, is actually we cannot tackle global environmental issues on our own. They don't recognize borders. So the only way we're going to succeed on the environmental question is, as I say, locally improving the infrastructure, making sure the transport links are good. We've started to do the low emission cars, etc. We've got to invest more in that, and we will do. But ultimately, if you're going to cut down the pollution, you've got to cut down air travel and all of that. So it's a big issue. All I can say is we are committed to doing it. There are no instant answers, but it'll be done.
And a quick one, which was one of the questions submitted that I haven't put down on the list, but as you mentioned investing in rail transport, high speed 2, yes or no?
I'm not convinced it's going to give the benefit to everybody.
Thank you. Howard.
I'll take the HS2 first. Absolutely not. We would shelve it immediately. It's just a vanity project. An EU dictate to have a railway that we don't need.
Green technologies?
The green. Are we talking about green technology, producing energy greenly, or are we talking about making factories and buildings more green. If we're talking about green technology, yes, but it's a mathematical, it's a chemical equation. It depends. What you put in has to result in less carbon dioxide out, otherwise it's not really green. The Prius car is a prime example of this. It actually produces more carbon dioxide in its manufacture than a normal car does, consuming all the fuel in its normal lifetime. That actually isn't green. It might look green, and it might be really trendy and right on, but it's not truly green. We don't support wind farms. We support a true mix of energy production that's under our control. However, we're not cavalier. We want to be prudent with what we've got. And by taking back control of the utilities, reprivatising, renationalising them, controlling our own energy production, we can actually be prudent with it rather than relying on other countries.
Thank you. Brian?
First of all, my esteemed apologies. I get heated when there's aggression. It ramps me up, and I was concerned for our friend here who is autistic. And anyway, I just didn't think there was going to be a bunch of yelling. I thought it was going to be a church.
Green technologies. Yes,
Green technologies, well, I've been doing computers for 30 years and helping grandmothers and people who are from the past for over 10 years. And I'm also a futurist. That's a person who studies the future of technology and connects it with how things have changed to understand how things do change. And in the next 10 years, we'll see more change in technology, including green technology, than we've ever seen before. So the promises of we'll do green, we'll do green, we'll do green, it's coming no matter what. And I think that it is a simplistic notion to be talking about whether we should have green things or brown things or whatever things, because we should embrace that the future is important for all of us and that we should be not shortchanging that important thing for our children and my children's children. Thank you. Was there another question?
I think that's covered.
What was the other one, just so I can think?
No, that's fine. Mike.
Can I agree with Brian that the technology is coming? You're absolutely right.
I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to touch you.
No, he didn't touch me. It's pushing me. I thought I was having a quick scrum down at the rugby match for a second. So it's okay. I can handle myself. I was lucky enough when I was at Transport to go to Korea and see what they're developing. And hydrogen-fueled vehicles are coming. And you will put water in, and you will drive that vehicle, and you will think you're driving a petrol or a diesel car. It's there. I've seen the technology, I've ridden the bikes, I've driven the cars. It is coming. So you're absolutely right, Brian. Whether we like it or not, it's coming.
I loved it for 30 years, but...
Brian, we're trying to hear the candidates.
Who was talking to me?
No, I wasn't Brian, actually. This is going to be a lovely evening, I know. There we are. RES, BSC, wonderful local companies doing fantastic work. And I've been up there on more than one occasion. I was at the laboratories over at BSC only the other night. Locally, I'm really worried about the pollution, particularly in the village. We have a wonderful bypass. Most of the lorries don't notice that. So you see the amount of heavy traffic coming to the town. And I've been working with the local authority and the highways to see if we can get this weight limited through here, apart from deliveries, of course. If we can get that, you will remove a huge amount of the heavy traffic coming through. The bypass was built for a reason. Whole swathes of fields were cut through so we could do it. Charlie Ray's farm down out Wayside was covered with all the excess soil that we took off of it. Devastated his farm for years. If that was worthwhile, the key is that actually we protect the village, and we must make sure the environment is good for you and my kids as well.
Alan, do you want to recap the questions there, just to be up to speed? The last two there from Karen were to do with green technologies such as RES and air quality, particularly around the M25.
There was also a question about HS2.
There was.
Yes, let me just say this. I say no to HS2 for three very good reasons. One, it will spoil our environment and do a lot of damage to local communities in its path. it will not deliver any real benefit to local communities or communities as a whole, actually. And 3, it's a waste of public money that should be used elsewhere, such as in education, healthcare, and in railways once we bring them back into public hands. Green technologies are very important in the future because we'll be relying on them to tackle climate change and prevent us being boiled alive by global warming caused by excessive reliance on oil, gas and other polluting things, which is why I'm also against fracking, and I will do my best to stop any fracking attempts that come to our communities because they will destroy our land as well as our planet. In terms of green technologies, I do support wind farms where there is enough wind. I believe they can be designed so that they don't spoil the view or the landscape. I believe Britain can benefit very well from solar energy, and I also believe that because we're an island and because we've got lots of rivers, there's lots of nice rivers in Hertfordshire, we can also benefit from hydroelectric technology. I mean, the hydroelectric technology can deliver huge amounts of energy for our country, and it will also be a very good long-term investment for the United Kingdom and for you. I also believe our energy should be brought back into public hands so we're not constantly faced with energy price rises from a cartel of corporations just wanting to make profits at our expense, which is wrong, unfair, and causes needless deaths every year. Why should we have to choose between heating and eating just because of the profiteering those companies? The answer from me and the Green Party is we shouldn't have to face this. We should have control of our energy. We should have control of investments so we can invest in the technology we need, and we also need a more democratic say so we can clean up our air, and which will help save lives. Air quality is important. It's not just about the environment. Clean air saves lives. Dirty air causes early deaths unnecessarily and unfairly. So I promise that the Green Party will help keep the air clean in Kings Langley and Hemel Hempstead and keep the green grass growing nicely with these investments. Thank you.
I hope I can cover the range of points, and please pick me up, Chair, if I don't. First of all, Labour is committed to seeking to achieve at the Paris Summit a zero emissions policy internationally for the second half of this century. We must do that. And that's going to mean all sorts of challenges, and we have to have the courage to face those. In terms of locally, sorry, I should pause and take it really, shouldn't I? Remember, I mean, keep talking in the heckles, but anyway, on the Greenbelt, the absolute essence for me of, when I started my teaching career at Langley, around Kings Langley, around this whole part of Hertfordshire, around the land in which the new town of Hemel Hempstead was built, is the Greenbelt. That is this area. Now, the Coreham Borough Council have approved a plan to build over 900 homes without any significant infrastructure development. A small primary school, but not even a GP surgery, and no road improvements at all to the west of Hemel. And the land that has been built on has been land banked for many years by two of the country's largest developers, Barratt Homes and Taylor Wimpey. And the concern I have, and I don't know this, right, we're trying to research it, is just how much of our green belt around here is land banked by those big developers, because it's very clear that Conservative controlled a Coreham Borough Council, when the big developers roll up, the Conservative politicians roll over. That's the fact of the matter. And so Labour is very clear on this nationally and locally. We develop brownfield. We work with smaller developers wherever there is the opportunity. And that, yes, that's more expensive and it's going to make our own housing targets more difficult to make and all the rest of it. I accept that. But that's the way we've got to go. The big developers love green fields. They don't want to detoxify. They don't want muck away. They don't want all those costs. Right? So we absolutely have to factor that. The second of our key pledges, particularly pertinent in Kings Langley and the other villages, also of course in Hemel, is to campaign very strongly against year-on-year rail fare rises, station car parking fare rises, and local bus service cuts. If you are serious about anything green, that's a toxic combination. And I know that some of these things are not in the power of the MP, and I know that some of these things are a matter for Decorum Borough Council, which is why I urge your support for Labour candidates there. But I also know this, that it's not my job to cosy up to the Borough Council, whether they're a Labour Council or a Conservative one or any other. It's my job to challenge at every point. And you will know on the green issues exactly where I stand on every one of those. I hope that addresses the lady at the back. On HS2, I'm really honest here, I'm not convinced the case has been well enough made. I'm not sure that actually whenever I'm on a long distance train journey, usually I find I'm nearly there and I actually need 15 more minutes on my laptop because I'm working. I'm not convinced the case has been made. But I will say this, because we've got to be honest on this. You can't say we want more and more rail, we want everything off the roads, and we don't want any new railways. That's a really difficult one. We need to have the courage to discuss that. So, yeah, I'm going to sit on the fence on that one, just honestly so.
Thank you. Can I ask William Garrett, would you come up to the front? And if you could do a mic for David Holwell, who I think's at the back. Is that right? David, can you put your hand up? Harold, could you take the mic back that way and we'll take William first? Harold, if you can go to the back. Wherever it is.
Would the panel agree that the rise of UKIP is potentially unproductive in securing the electorate's desire for a referendum on the UK's membership of the EU, given that they are splitting the Conservative vote and therefore undermining the only party who could realistically offer an in-out referendum? Do you think you're being unproductive to it?
This is a question really aimed at the Labour Party candidate. The Labour Party has stated that there will not be a referendum on the EU. How will it safeguard our interests in the face of ever-increasing demands for our cash?
Thank you. I'd like to... presumably because they didn't stand. We have invited all of the candidates. So in a question to me, I can answer that question. As a question to the parties, I'll choose to let them come back to that if they want to. But we'll take the question. Can I, rather than... I think there were two questions implied in William's question, and I'd like to run through quickly on one of them, which is a part of that, before we come to the EU. So the question I'd like to ask each of you in turn is, this is first past the post. I know that there was discussion of changing it, but only one of you gets to represent these good people. Therefore, some of you are going to come fourth, fifth and sixth. Who should we vote for to work out which is a wasted vote amongst you? Mike, which of these candidates do you fear most?
I don't feel, it sounds arrogant, but I don't fear anybody, and you shouldn't fear anybody. We live in a democracy. Anybody's entitled to put their name on the ballot paper, put their deposit down and do it. There is no doubt that people want a referendum. That's what they should deserve. That's the only policy UKIP have got, really. So at the end of the day, let's vote Conservative and make sure you get the referendum.
Thank you. Brian, Is a vote for you a wasted vote?
Yes. I hate to say this. I'm autistic, don't vote for me. I represent the people who you could not vote for before, for women who couldn't stand, for Irish people who couldn't stand, for blacks who couldn't stand, for dogs, well, maybe in the future. But that the idea of EU, I'm from Canada
Thank you. Rabbi.
Oh, I thought I could have as much time as he did. Who's he?
Yeah, certainly a vote for me will not be a wasted vote, because as I said before, Lib Dems have demonstrated that in government they can be a very serious influence for the good. But to answer the question generally, I don't think that's how you should vote. The problem we've got with politics in the UK is you vote on very partisan basis. And just very quickly, in the last general election, this is what happened. Tories got 33% of the vote. Bear with me with the figures. They got 306 MPs. Labour got 28% of the vote. They got 258 MPs. Lib Dems got 23% of the vote, and we only ended up with 57 MPs. That shows just how broken the voting system is. So I think what we've...
I think that's fine as a sort of abstract why the Liberal Democrats would change things, but it didn't really address the why we should vote for you here.
No, they should vote for... I've answered why they should vote for me, because I think the more votes the Lib Dems get, the more...
Thank you.
Authority will have to negotiate in the inevitable coalition that's going to happen.
Thank you. Alan?
People of Kings Langley, there is no such thing as a wasted vote except when you don't cast your vote at all. You should vote... You should vote for what you believe in, not simply to get rid of an MP you don't like. And that is why we Greens are committed to scrapping first past the post and introducing some form of proportional representation, whether it's proportional representation by party list or single transferable votes. That way, your voices can be represented fairly. Also, a Green MP has been elected, a wonderful woman by the name of Caroline Lucas, who has worked hard for Brighton and who has been a voice for the people in Parliament, and if I may say, the real opposition to the coalition. And as for the question to you, yes, we believe you should have an EU referendum, but it's for democratic reasons. We the Green Party, believe even the following three things: yes to a referendum, yes to a democracy, and yes to staying in a reformed Europe that can benefit us all and benefit our environment. Thank you.
Can I go to Tony first?
Right. First of all, I think, are we taking all those?
No, if we just take the question of, in this constituency, given that it is first past the post, why you?
Well, why me? This, I hope you won't want to ask, you won't need to ask that question at the end of the evening. Labour won and held this constituency with big majorities in 97 and 2001. We lost it by less than 500 votes 10 years ago. Mike knows, and everybody else knows, who the competition for this seat is between. I know that if I'm elected, it will be my job to represent you, whoever you have voted for, and I'm very conscious of that, and I'm also very conscious that it's going to be very close. I've said on all of my literature, and I should say, that had I not been selected, there were no women on the shortlist, for the record. That disturbs me. But had I not been selected last June or July, I would now be running an all-party campaign called useyourvote.com. I'm absolutely committed to democracy, and I say this now, everybody here should vote, even if you don't vote for me. Now, I'll be a bit upset if you don't, having asked you to, but we must vote. People die for the right to vote, so it's absolutely vital to use your vote. But if you want change, There's an awful lot, I'm concerned that there's an awful lot of people in this election are going to cast what they will think of as a protest vote. Any vote that isn't a vote for Labour in this election is a vote for more of the same. So, if you like what you've got, that's fine, and if you don't, if you want change, it's a Labour vote. So that's my definition of wasting or not wasting. But of course, at a philosophical level, the socialist thing is a waste of fact. Could we get to come back on referenda and that stuff?
We'll come back to Europe. Howard, I decided that you ought to go last on that question simply because the specific aspect of the question was, is voting UKIP damaging the Tory vote, and therefore, is it a waste of vote to vote for you? I believe was the question. Should this gentleman be discouraged from voting for you if he's anti-Europe?
The second question is about why should they vote for...
The key question is it wasting the vote by voting for you when if you vote for Mike you'll get a referendum?
Okay, this is a democracy, and in a democracy it's unsustainable to have 60 to 70% of people wanting a referendum on Europe and not getting it. We've been told by Tony Blair, you've read, Tony Blair has suggested that you're not safe to be given a referendum. The reason I'm standing here today is because the cast iron guarantee that was given by Mr. Cameron in 2010 didn't materialise. They sold out to the Liberal Democrats and you haven't got it, okay? We would not be sitting here today talking about a referendum on Europe if it wasn't for UKIP actually being here and actually pressurising the government into doing it. It's as simple as that. Now, I've read today that Mr. Juncker or Schulz has said that it doesn't matter what David Cameron says about renegotiating, it ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen until the European Parliament decides in another 10 or 12 years in the normal cycle of their events. You've also been told that, or read, that Mrs. Merkel has actually said quite openly, the biggest issue facing us is open door immigration, and that is not negotiable. So if you want to have a referendum on Europe, if you actually want to have your say, there is only one party who will give you that, and that is UKIP. You need to ask him that.
Thank you. As it was your question, William, please shout out. I'll make sure people have heard.
You say, just based on Howard, you say you're not a wasted vote. Yeah. If I gave you the option that you could stand down now and Mike Penny would win, and we'd get a referendum, or if you stayed standing, you just split his vote and we let Labour in, what would you choose?
With the greatest respect to Mike, because I know he is quite Eurosceptic, the answer is no. No, because we don't believe that we are going to get a referendum in 2017. It depends on... Look, at the moment... Okay, but look, you have to look at the poll. The figures are that neither of these parties can form a government. You don't know that. Well, at the moment, that's what the figures are showing.
Yeah. Thank you. Tony was most offended by what you said, and also when you come back, Tony, one of the questions was specifically for you. So I want to make sure that particular, which was addressed to you. Yeah. Do you want to take that now?
Yes, certainly. I'm going to be really honest about this. I honestly believe in democracy, but I'm not convinced. Yeah. I'm not convinced by referendums. I believe in general elections where parties have the courage of their convictions. And, David Cameron is offering an in-out referendum, not because you or I should have one, but because he needs to keep the Eurosceptics, including Mike, at bay, and he needs to keep them in his party. And he knows that. But I do want to say this. Well, look, I was 10 then. Give me a chance. 12, the maths has gone. Look, I'm a committed European. I do not believe we should put our country's business, everything else, in a kind of limbo between now and a referendum. I believe that if political parties believe we should be out of Europe, they should say so in their manifesto, and if they don't, they shouldn't. And if that means they split as a result, then they should do so. But I think this idea of having a referendum on every populist thing is simply not the answer. I'm an absolutely committed European. I'm proud of that. I absolutely think, I've dealt with Europe as a funding agency. It's a nightmare of an organisation. But I don't give up on the idea of countries working together and things like the European Union because it's badly done. My word, it is. And who said it's Angela Merkel's decision? Look, we need to be at that table and fighting for what's right. We need to be in Europe making the argument, leading alongside rather than, simply becoming the new Merkel, if that's the suggestion. But we should be at that table making the case in Europe for Britain.
Thank you. Ravi.
I just wanted to say very briefly, the referendum that's being promised to us, are you really convinced you're going to get it? Let's go back to you say yes, we were promised one last time, we didn't get it. For Mike to say, or for Tony to say, Lib Dems didn't allow it, is nonsense. The Tories are the majority party. They stopped us, and I'm going to say this, they stopped us moving forward with the tuition fees. They could have insisted that it goes ahead with the referendum. They did not want it. They're misleading the public again. And that's the bit that gets me. Cameron says he's going to renegotiate and then have a referendum on the renegotiation. I think Tony is right. There's not going to be a renegotiation, and Cameron is going to say, sorry guys, I said there'd be a referendum if there was renegotiation. You're not going to get it.
Mike.
Whether or not you're pro-European or not, ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, I'm 57 years of age. I've never had a vote on whether or not we were in this club called the European Union, called the European Common Market when you guys voted. In the last Parliament, we had a vote. We would have been on the statute today, and it was voted down by the Liberal Democrats and Labour in the House of Lords. That's a fact. So whether you believe we were going to do it or not, it was voted down by our coalition partners. Believe it or not, you wouldn't believe we were partners, would you? Voted down by our coalition partners. And that's why we've got a real problem. I think there are people that want to stay in Europe, and I respect that. And I think there are people that want to leave. And there are people like me that would like to renegotiate a position that we can control their borders, decide what our courts decide, whether or not a prisoner should have the vote or not. That's our decision for our Parliament. That's my view. But at the end of the day, it should be your decision. And we tried to get it in. It's now in the manifesto. It was voted down. I voted for the referendum in this Parliament a couple of months ago. And it went to the Lords, and it was killed by the Labour Party. And that tells you everything. And we're their Liberal Democrat friends of the Lords, by the way.
Thank you. Brian.
I am an immigrant, so the idea of being part of something that's different and new is what makes me happy. I look at the question of the EU and inclusion and exclusion as a bit of a loose notion about what is. It seems to be a bit of a let's have an argument about something, and instead of being distracted from the things that are important here in UK that we can do ourselves, that we can make happen. That the idea that these polls are supposed to be so accurate, but this poll itself, when you look at the so-called as lies, damn lies, and statistics, you look deeper in, and there was a poll a couple weeks ago, and I couldn't imagine, because my daughters are in high school, and it was that 10% of young boys are addicted to pornography. And I thought, this is bonkers, that's just crazy. And I looked into what this poll was, and the kind of question and the way that it was presented, and the lack of presentation in all the media for what this was, which was not a scientific poll, not a real understanding of things. Science has a way of understanding things, and what's being presented to me seems a bit of a flim-flam. Okay. And I think Europe is a question that we should all ask and understand, but a deep understanding of it, and not just, hey man, you should be upset.
Alan.
One point I wanted to make earlier was this. I mean, blaming each other for past things does not solve any problems or address issues that we should be focusing on. I mean, what I must say, I am slightly Eurosceptic, but the point is there should be an EU referendum. I mean, I wasn't even born or even conceived the last time we had a vote on the common market. That's how young I am, everyone. And I believe everyone on here should be able to vote on whether we stay in the EU or not. And remember, ultimately, it is your choice and your say and your opinion that counts when we get an EU referendum. The Green Party will promise an EU referendum for the sake of democracy and for the sake of respecting the people. Let's hear it for democracy, everyone. Power to the people!
Hooray! Hooray for democracy! Thank you. Another question from Graham Elliott, please. Thanks, Graham.
One of our greatest peacetime prime ministers introduced right to buy. Do you feel right to buy was a good idea, and did you benefit from it?
I think we have to start with you, Mike. Particularly with the way the question was introduced.
Yeah. Yes, I did benefit from it. I was a fireman in Basildon at the time, and I bought, through the right to buy, my first home ticket, and I got on that ladder, and very quickly I was managed to sell that. Now that property wasn't lost. I was renting it, then I paid a mortgage on it, and then that property was bought by someone else. We made a mistake though, and the great lady did make a couple of mistakes, but she made a mistake on this. We didn't hypothecate the money of the sales directly back into social housing. That was the mistake, and that's why it's very important that the new schemes actually make sure that the money goes back in. Now, there are people saying to me, because we've announced on the housing associations, well, now a lot of people already have the right to buy in housing associations if they've already come across and that stock's been transferred across. But the guarantees on housing associations was made by the government. It's your money. All the guarantees were made by that. And for someone who's on a six-figure sum telling someone else in this world, as a chief executive of a housing association, they're not allowed to buy their home when they're on a six-figure sum, I find very abhorrent. We must make sure we protect it. We must make sure it goes. But we're a home-owning nation, and we need more social housing. So let's release that equity again, make sure it goes back into social housing. And yes, I did benefit, and I think it's a fantastic idea for people to get on the housing ladder.
I'm guessing that's a no, Brian.
No, to what?
Not having benefited.
From the housing? Well, I know a lot of people who did. But I will say that this new one that's been presented, I did the maths, and it says that if 15,000 people take up this option to do it, the government will have to come up with £1 billion, which is 1% of the NHS budget. So if more than 15,000 people go, say there was 150,000 people who I'd love to have buy their own homes, that's £100 billion, which is the entire NHS budget, give or take. And I'm kind of like, that's a great idea, but where are you supposed to get the money from? And I just keep coming back to doing some sums because I think that everybody can, it's no vice to be a novice, even to maths.
Howard.
I didn't benefit from the right to buy, but I actually fully supported, and UKIP fully supports it as well. The councils are sitting on some very expensive properties, and it is actually important that people get on the housing ladder and have the opportunity to buy. But it is very important that money is put back in to the system and going back into social housing to help the most needy people.
Thank you.
I have benefited from housing, social housing, living in it, not buying it. I've got a problem with this concept of the scheme, and I had a problem with the initial one. And the problem I have is on the discounting element of it. As you rightly said, Mike, those houses have been built, bought, by our money, taxpayers' money, to then give me, who's benefited from a low rent for 20 years, a further discount to buy it, is to me, just doesn't sit right with me. By all means, make it easier to buy, give them a discount against the market value of the house, and make it 10% cheaper than if it was on the market. And then that would be fair. But the real problem with the scheme is this. We're going to take out another, however many thousands, 15,000 houses from the social sector. Where are those people who need build new houses, one every 5 years, every 10 years? We need those houses now. I've got another problem with the housing association, and I don't think this is quite appreciated. Again, Mike has said, housing associations are subsidized bodies, they get grants from us. And up to about 3-4 years ago, they were doing their job, i.e. building social housing. What they're now starting to do, and I know this from my own experience because I sit on planning in Watford, what they're now doing is coming up with plans which says we are building houses for market rent, not social rent. They're changing their business model. If you now, so just picture the scene moving forward. You allow them to sell all their houses, they get all that money, they build houses, but they don't build affordable social houses, they build houses at market rent. So the people who are looking for social housing are left without. And that's the problem I've got with it, not the principle, but the consequences.
Thank you. Alan, right to buy.
No, I believe right to buy was a bad idea, still remains a bad idea, and has caused a lot of pain and misery to young people like myself. And no, I've never benefited from right to buy, partly because I will admit I've never lived in a council house. My parents have owned their home for years and years, and so are theirs. I admit to being that middle class, yeah. Yes, I mean, but right to buy has decimated our country's social housing stock, and which a lot of people need, and therefore, right to buy needs to be ended, and we need to have more social housing and more community housing for everyone, because everyone should have the right to a safe home and a safe shelter. I mean,
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Tony.
Anybody who heard Theresa May on this yesterday will know that this isn't a serious policy. This is a part of the remarketing of David Cameron and the transformation, his transformation from Scrooge to Father Christmas in 72 hours. I'm never going to argue against property ownership, but what I am going to argue about every time is that private is better than public, that buying is better than renting, that private is better than social. And the reason, Mike, and you know this, the reason the money wasn't hypothecated, and I say this, I'm going to declare something that may well not win votes here. I say this as a sociologist. Margaret Thatcher had one of the finest sociological minds around. And what she was engaged in was not simply widening property ownership. She was interested in changing the demography of our structure because she knew that it would deliver a political premium. I think we've had benefits from it, I'm not saying that. And the fact of the matter is, this was about the change in the landscape of Britain. Hemel Hempstead and the new towns are the finest examples of what you get when you do really good social housing, where you say it's not second class, it's not for the also-rans or never made it, it's not for the people who can't scrape together the money through their own slothfulness or whatever. Social, you know, the very substance of our new towns is that they're massive social housing projects. And of course what happened was that they were the first properties to be sold off, because the other problem is, you know, a lot of people found themselves in a right to buy. For instance, I grew up in Harlesden, northwest London, and if you're on the top floor of the Stonebridge estate, you didn't want to buy that flat at any price. You should have been paid to take it with you, right? So what we actually did with Right to Buy, through the failure to hypothecate, which was absolutely politically deliberate, was we changed the political landscape and we diminished from that day forward social housing as a genuine choice, as a proper option, and not as an also-ran. We've trashed social housing for too long, and guess how they're proposing to fund this? The councils should sell off the best council houses that they currently have to fund the housing association discounts. Sounds like history repeating itself.
Thank you. Paul Tucker. Paul.
Thank you, Derek. One question or two?
Two, because I think it's all part of the same.
It
was what
is.
I'd noted.
First question: what action should a future government take to ensure that the UK maintains its commitment to giving 0.7% of its GDP to overseas aid, and how would it encourage others to do the same? And the second one: with 58 million children in the world still not having access to primary education, what action should a future government take to increase this when the Millennium Development Goals are reviewed in September?
Before you answer that, I will provide a balanced perspective by recognising that one of the questions which was submitted took a somewhat different view on overseas aid and said, why should we be giving 12 billion away when our own infrastructure is crumbling and people in this country are relying on food banks? And for that matter, the Prime Minister tells us we are one of the world's wealthiest nations, so why are there so many food banks? But overseas aid, Alan.
On overseas aid, I mean, we do need to fix our infrastructure, but we can also give overseas aid as well if we help even out wealth distributions so that everyone benefits, and so that we have a fairer distribution of wealth. I also believe it's the system in place globally that's causing all this poverty around the world. I mean, in Africa, poverty has occurred largely because of the actions of the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and also imperious designs of Western corporations who are making profits at the expense of other people, especially corporations like Monsanto, which is trying to force farmers to grow their genetically modified seeds, which means farmers cannot save seeds and they end up having to buy seeds from Monsanto, which is just plain wrong. Farmers should be able to grow their own food and support their families and their countries. They should not be forced to support corporations whose only interest is shareholders' profits. We can continue. What we need to do on aid is also make sure that it actually gets to the right people and not, for example, to corrupt officials who are trying to pocket it to feather their own nests. We need to make sure that people who need help get it quickly and get the help we need. We also need a whole new global consensus in place. A green consensus that can help everyone and protect our environment and make sure we have fair trade, not so-called free trade, which is not free or fair.
Thank you. Tony.
Well, first of all, we should absolutely set the achievement of that target in stone, and we should seek to exceed it, not scrape into it. This cuts to the chase in terms of, for me, the whole debate around immigration, aid and poverty. Look, the main reason why most people emigrate is a mix of poverty and opportunity and aspiration. Lots of poverty, no opportunity, lots of aspiration. That's why my parents left Ireland in the late 1930s separately as as teenagers. That's why whole generations from that country alone did. So if you go down the UKIP track of cutting international aid, what you will get is far more immigration, not far less. And the immigrants that you will receive will have far greater needs. And what we have to work towards is a world where immigration is a choice and an opportunity. And we have opportunities to travel now my parents never had. Where globalisation is something positive rather than something negative. And it just seems to me that as soon as we know where the surges in migration come from. They come from the poorest and most war-torn and most poverty-stricken places. So we need to develop and give more to aid, because actually that's not a way of taking money away from our food banks. That's actually a way of ensuring we won't need them. So let's think about this in the round. And can we just have a bit of compassion in there as well, please?
Ravi?
Yeah, for me, this is a question of morality. We are the human race. We are not little Englanders. And it would be totally wrong for us to say, I'm all right, Jack. I don't really care that the children in Biafra are starving. It's not how we work. But so I think I agree with Tony in terms of protecting that meager sum. We really should. I don't think there should be a debate. It should be something we agree across the parties.
Thank you.
But just a little bit more. I think there's also an economic benefit to us of doing that. If we make this country self-sufficient, if we make them able to stand on their own hands, then they'll be able to export to us, and we'll be able to export to them. So there's that economic one. And the final point, to address the gentleman or lady who talked about why do we give money away when we've got food banks? Quite frankly, two separate things. We've got food banks because we in the UK are running a very severe benefits welfare cuts program. I may have been in the coalition, and we may have even subscribed to the bedroom tax unwisely initially, which we then corrected, so one of our MPs turned it. But try and separate the two is what I'm saying. The responsibility for food banks is with us at home. Let's tackle that as a home issue. As far as aiding the world is concerned, there's no negotiation. We've got to do it.
Thank you. Brian, you are applauding. Yes.
Oh, good. The question is about funding, assistance in the world.
GDP.
And the second part?
Share of GDP that's going in aid was the first
Share
part.
of GDP. I kind of go, I look at complexity and try to distill it down for grandmothers, and a lot of times people say, why didn't anyone ever tell me that it was just you click that and it was working? Things I look at in the bigger sense of economy and the numbers, all of these numbers are numbers in a computer now. GDP, the debt, the deficit, the quantitative easing. All these numbers are just numbers. We don't print money anymore. Money just is made up in so many ways. And I just don't understand about how the jobs that we don't have today, because they were sold to overseas. In the future, we're going to have automation and robots, and we're going to have a lot more unemployment. We'll get back to the point of having 50% unemployment, like when women stayed home. And what are we going to do? Because I see that the government in the future's one job is to employ its citizens, because otherwise, what are they going to be doing?
Follow that.
I'm sorry, Mike, but I was going to.
Follow that then. Okay. Brilliant. Great. Paul, we've corresponded for years. Our views are almost identical on this particular issue. We worked on the chain of debt and all the other things we've done over the years. So passionately, I believe that we not only should do it, I voted for it in the House of Commons in the last Parliament, in the statute, it'll have to be voted out for us to change the GDP. I would accept that. That's for a moral reason. It's actually for an ethical reason. It's for our immigration issues, but it's also for our safety. Because if we get the second part of your question and we invest that GDP properly in education, not getting wasted into countries that are sending rockets up into space and God knows what, but actually get it down to the grassroots, if necessary through third parties, so it doesn't go off to Switzerland and things like that, and we can get it into education. We can turn these countries around and get them away from the terrorists and those that are just trying to destroy their countries and destroy us. Syria, it was a very wealthy country. Iraq was a wealthy country. These people now are coming to see at my office on a regular basis. I had someone from Syria earlier on today. They've applied for asylum. They've arrived in this country. We need to invest that money well, continue to make sure as our economy grows it is. I know that's not hugely popular with some of my own supporters, but we have a moral and ethical, and actually it's a good insurance policy, and that's why we should do it.
Stand alone on this one. UKIP wants to reduce the amount of money we give to a level that's actually compatible with our GDP for the size of our country. However, we want to target that money appropriately to where it's actually needed. The problem is that a lot of this money at the moment, the £12 billion a year that's being given in overseas aid, doesn't get to the actual people who actually need it. It ends up in the bank accounts, and some guy bought a helicopter, I read the other day, with this money. That is totally wrong. And remember I said when I started off that I'm a dentist and I actually speak to people. Some of my patients actually do overseas aid. And they tell me that if that money was actually given to them, so they could take it to the village where they go to, they could actually target the money and it would actually have a real positive effect. The problem is it doesn't get there. That's the issue. It gets consumed by the dictators. It's going to China. It's going to India. India has a space program. India actually turned around and said it doesn't want the money anymore. So we actually have to target it. When we actually have people in this country who are going to food banks, I think that's also a moral dilemma. Those people should actually benefit as well.
Paul's waving at me. Briefly.
I just need to respond to that, because I think one thing the UK government has done is to match fund things like the projects that Christian Aid does and so on, and therefore making sure that the money does get to where it's meant to go. I have to say, I think you are saying a lot of myths about where overseas aid is going. It sounds good, but the facts don't back it up. They do.
Can I just take one more question, which I'd got down as Victoria Bate. You here, Victoria? Please.
In the light of Uruguay being sued by Philip Morris for introducing new anti-smoking laws, with clauses in the new TTIP agreement meaning that this could happen here, how do the parties see the TTIP benefiting us?
Howard, TTIP.
Do you want me to explain to it? Hands up who knows what TTIP is, sorry. Okay, hands up who doesn't know what it is. Right, I think we'd better explain it. So do you want me to do it, or...?
Are you happy for Mike to explain TTIP
okay?
to us?
Okay. Howard might not agree with me on this, but there we are. There is a lot of scaremongering. There is a new trade agreement which is being negotiated by the European Union with America. And one of the consequences of this has been a lot of scaremongering about privatisation of the NHS. A side issue from that, a completely side issue of that, is that the people are saying that we could be bound by American law rather than our own jurisdiction. The only law outside this country we're bound by is the European legislation. This is scaremongering. It will not have any effect whatsoever on your healthcare or what goes on to do with, for instance, trying to cease people smoking. I voted for the smoking ban in public places. I think it was very important that we had that. I don't know how we're going to enforce it in cars. I must admit, I'm the police minister. My police tell me I have no idea how it's going to do it. However, TTIP, please do not be scared by an agreement with the Americans. Of all the countries in the world we shouldn't be worried about is this. It's actually not a problem for us.
Howard?
TTIP is being negotiated behind our backs by the European bureaucrats with America. If it's actually not a problem, why isn't it out in the open? Why can't we see what's being negotiated? But is it being negotiated openly?
It has to come before Parliament. Parliament will vote on it, no matter whether you're on there or anybody.
Well,
but every draft has been in secret.
so if it is not something to worry about, why can't we see it? We're opposed to TTIP. We should be negotiating our own trade agreements with America from the United Kingdom outside of the EU.
Ravi?
I won't pretend I know the detail of it, but the principle, I'm actually with Mike on this, is nothing for us to be afraid of. It's trying to get our business relationships with the big foreign countries, with the big companies, under some kind of control. And I honestly don't think that our Parliament will let something that's going to disadvantage the UK go through. And again, I endorse what Mike has said about the health scare. Quite frankly, that is actually, and that's how I know, because it's being negotiated openly, health, the NHS is actually excluded from TTIP, expressively excluded. So don't just believe all the scaremongering that's going on. Do a bit of research, and I don't think it's as bad as it's being made out to be.
Thank you. Alan?
I would just like to make a point that TTIP hasn't actually been completed yet, and we don't know what will be included and what will not. But I can say this. TTIP benefits no one but greedy corporations wanting to skirt by our laws just so they can claim more and more profit. I mean, there has been a similar agreement in North America sometime called the North American Free Trade Agreement. Let me tell you what actually happened. Hundreds of thousands of jobs in the USA, Canada, Mexico and other nations signed agreements were lost. Those countries got no economic benefit, only multinational corporations did. We should also suppose TTIP because it is such a threat to democracy. I mean, these corporations, which will give power to sue us and our governments if we pass policies that just affect their profits, are unelected and unaccountable. And if TTIP passes, they will be suing our governments in international arbitration courts where there is no right of appeal and which are staffed by corporate lawyers working for those same corporations. Therefore, we must oppose TTIP at every level, and the Green Party is fully opposed to TTIP and any other similar agreements. Thank you.
I think the bigger thing that came out for me in the question was not the power of TTIP, but the power of Philip Morris. And I think one of the biggest challenges that national democracies face is the triumph of global shareholders over national citizens. That really worries me. And it opens up a threat to our democracy and every democracy. And one only has to look at the fact that, if you run a small business, and I do, and you're a couple of days late with your VAT demand, you get your fine. If you're Starbucks and you don't pay your tax, you get coffee at the Treasury and you agree to cut a deal. How did we get to this? And it just seems to me that whoever is elected, and indeed all of the national governments, and I hope here, in a sense, the political power blocks of Europe and of nations can do a really positive job, because it's only at that scale that we can speak to the Apples, we can speak to the Starbucks, we can speak to the Philip Morrises, because I'm really concerned that actually it's not our choices and your choices, we were talking about wasted votes earlier, that's driving how we live and where we go. It's massive, it's not actually faceless bureaucrats, though some of them are. It's faceless corporations over which we have no power. In a democracy, we can kick the bureaucrats out. We can do, can't say it in a church, we can do very, very little about the corporate powerhouses. national governments and international blocs need to have the courage to speak back to power in that sense. We must do that.
Thanks, Tom. I was working on the assumption that by your hand signals you had spoken to that very clearly.
No. The future of computers represents the increase of transparency that we can see, the people can see what's going on in government. People aren't stupid. The grandmothers I help aren't stupid. When people are shown the things and you go, oh, don't say I can't understand, I don't know math. Everybody can look and understand. And I want to know that in the future, will we look back at any of these decisions like we did at NAFTA in Canada and go, that was a bad decision? Why are we making these decisions that may be voted on in Parliament? Yes, but why is it not being presented to the people? Why is it an international agreement that covers the entire planet? Why is it that it is something that doesn't have openness if it's supposed to be so important? And I'll just ask the question, why do we need it in the first place? What's wrong with Britain's business? We need to go to the rest of the world to get business? I think Britain can work pretty hard themselves. Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry that I've gone well past your 9:30 suggested time limit, and I haven't succeeded in opening it to the floor. I think we've covered an extraordinary range of issues and had a pretty good insight to what people wanted to express from here. Is anybody going to be offended if I don't open it to further questions? A couple of quick ones. Very quick question.
Come out. I'm sorry. Mike Penning has voted to raise VAT to increase tuition fees. Yes, he has. For privatisation of the NHS and the Royal Mail. The privatisation, I would like some clarity about this.
Thank you. That was a quick question. And a quick question here.
There's been a lot of talk about... There's been a lot of talk about money tonight. I'd like to know, who do you think makes our money? And do you think that the manufacture of it should be under democratic control?
I suspect none of the candidates stand any chance of answering that last one in 30 seconds. One word question.
With the leaders debate and stuff, this is going to be quite a presidential kind of election.
That's not a one-word question.
One word answer, yes or no. Do you think your leader is up to the job of leading the country? Obviously, the Green Party's got some issues. Ed Miliband, so yes or no?
Can you all, presumably, those of you that are representing parties, all say yes in unison?
Yes, but I know some of you don't know.
Thank you.
I can say that honestly, yes. Casino Dave's been the one that's been relaunched.
Thank you very much. I think it only fair for you to answer the questions that have not been asked. 30 seconds each, starting from that end.
Well, I'm going to answer these two questions here. One, Mike can explain his voting record. Two, in terms of democracy and the workplace, I think we should.
Sorry, we haven't got time to do it in detail. Your 30 seconds will be wasted on that, working out the question.
Okay.
Anything that you need to say in another 15 seconds.
Our campaign's very simple. It's written all over my car outside. Together, we can put the heart back into Hemel Hempstead. I'm in the whole constituency. I'm in the villages. I'm in the town. We're already well on the road to having the symbol of the pavilion back. There's going to be a lot more.
Thank you, Howard. 30 seconds on whatever you think they need to hear from you.
Is there closing remarks?
Yeah. Closing remarks.
Okay. It's been a pleasure sitting in front of you and answering your questions. It's been a pleasure sitting this end, the safe end, tonight.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Alan.
Thank you everyone for coming tonight. It's been a pleasure to see all of you, and I believe that you should vote for the Green Party on May 7th if you want real change and if you want a voice that can represent your community for local and national issues.
Thank you. Ravi.
Right. In terms of who makes the money, I'm going to say it's the people, but it's a combination of the business leaders and the workers. What's wrong with it is the benefit does not trickle down to the workers. They don't get enough credit. So in terms of this evening, can I say thanks very much for all of those questions. And I'll just emphasize what I said at the beginning. I'm here to serve you.
Thank you. Brian.
30 seconds. I'd like to say that I'm so much a futurist, I got here yesterday at the right time. Unfortunately, it was not the right place, and I missed the other hustings. I could use help from anyone and everyone to do a better job of things, and I ask anyone who would like to give me a hand in anything, pretty please, because I'd like to do the best job I can, and I could use the help. And finally, an answer to the question about the who makes the money? The robots.
Mike.
My voting record is there for everybody to see. We put the VAT up because the country's in a financial mess and we had to raise the money somehow. I'm not proud, but we had to do it. I didn't vote to privatise the NHS. Privatisation of the NHS was started under Labour. 5% of the NHS work is done privately, done by Labour. It's now 6%, it's moved a little tiny bit. At the end of the day, I don't care who delivers it, as long as it's free at the point of delivery, is my strong view about that. I got into politics, ladies and gentlemen, because a gentleman and a wife. My wife, you've heard the story about my wife, but a guy called Sir Teddy Taylor. I wrote to him when I was in need. I was going to be thrown out the fire brigade. I was injured. I knew I couldn't stay. I wrote to him and I said, I've no idea if you can help me, but I'm desperate. He wrote back to me and said, I've no idea how I can help you either, but let's try. That's why I'm in politics, ladies and gentlemen.
And I just finally want to say thank you to you all. Thank you to you all for coming, and thank you for a splendid job you've done. I'm sure that we'll give you a great round of applause. Thank you.
Can we just give our chair a round of applause as well?
Good night.